Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into a listener request about the Cassie Carli law in Florida.
Right. It's, a story with a lot of layers, not just the law itself, but the person behind it, Cassie Carli, and, well, the system surrounding it.
Exactly. Our listener wanted a clearer picture, something concise about what happened and why this law came about, without getting totally lost in all the details.
Yeah, understandable. It's a really significant case.
Yeah.
And the law is a direct response to a tragedy.
So that's our mission today. Pull out the really crucial bits of Cassie's story and the legal changes. We're using two main sources.
Okay.
First, there's a very detailed analysis from Florida Protective Parents. It goes deep into her custody battle, which was, well, incredibly difficult.
High conflict is probably an understatement.
Right. And second, we have a news report from the Pensacola News Journal about the actual passing of the Cassie Carli law.
So those two together should give us a pretty full view. The personal struggle from the analysis, and then the legislative outcome from the news report.
Okay, let's start with Cassie Carli herself. What kind of picture do the sources paint?
Well, the Florida Protective Parents analysis, drawing from her family, describes her as, beautiful, happy, really positive, someone who seemed strong even when things were tough.
And she had a young daughter, Sailor.
Yes, Sailor. And her social media, like a lot of people's, showed that kind of curated happy life, right? Beach trips, birthdays, the usual stuff.
But the analysis points out that underneath that surface, things were very different.
Very different. She was in what's described as a really contentious custody battle with Sailor's father, Marcus Vanderbilt. And understanding that is key to the whole story.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the day she went missing. That was Sunday, March 27th, 2022.
Right. She was meant to pick up Sailor, who was 4 then, for Marcus. The meeting spot was Juana's Pagodas in Navarre.
Which wasn't their usual spot.
No, usually they met at a Walmart in Destin. That was the court-ordered location, actually, and it was about an hour from Cassie's place. Navarre was much closer.
Why they changed?
Well, according to people close to Cassie, Marcus had apparently been acting more agreeable lately, sort of playing the good guy, and he suggested this closer location.
And Juana's Pagodas, it's a busy place. Public.
Yeah, described as busy, public. So on the surface, you might think, okay, maybe safer than somewhere isolated.
But then things got strange pretty quickly.
Very quickly. Just a couple hours later, Cassie's dad gets this text from her phone. Said she had car trouble with staying with Marcus overnight.
Which immediately raised red flags for the family.
Big time.
Yeah.
Because after that text, there was just silence. No more contact from Cassie. Sailor wasn't reachable either.
So her sister tried to contact Marcus.
Yeah, her sister Rand started trying to figure out what was going on. And Marcus's story, well, it started shifting.
How so?
First, he apparently told Rand he dropped Cassie off at a friend's house but kept Sailor. But that story didn't hold.
Okay.
Then it changed to him saying he dropped Cassie off in the middle of nowhere in Destin.
Right, and the analysis makes a really good point here. Destin isn't exactly the wilderness.
Not at all. It's a peninsula, yeah, but it's packed with businesses, resorts, landmarks. You're not really going to be stranded in the middle of nowhere there without seeing something. It just sounded off.
Definitely suspicious. So what happened next? Sailor was found.
Thankfully, yes. Police located Sailor on the Wednesday after Cassie went missing. She was unharmed. By Friday, she was formally placed in protective custody.
Marcus.
He was arrested that same Friday night. The charges included destruction of evidence, which, is just trying to cover something up.
Wow. Okay, so this all unfolded incredibly fast. And the Florida Protective Parents analysis mentions that Cassie's disappearance really hit a nerve in the domestic violence community.
It really did, because people familiar with these situations saw the context. She'd previously filed for that domestic violence injunction against him, and this custody battle was known to be extremely high conflict.
Right.
The red flags, based on her court record, were already there for those who knew what to look for.
So maybe we should define what high conflict custody battle actually means in this context. The analysis, not just on that, right?
Yeah, it does. Basically, professionals often see it as situations where the parents just cannot co-parent. There are constant court filings, often with allegations of abuse, and they just can't agree on anything amicably.
Sounds incredibly stressful.
It is. The analysis even calls these cases like high-risk patients in the court system. They need special handling.
And it mentions protective parents. What's the definition they use?
They define the protective parent as the one, typically like Cassie seemed to be, who's focused on peace, avoiding chaos, prioritizing the child's safety above the conflict.
And these parents face unique challenges.
Huge challenges. Finding lawyers who really get the dynamics of control and manipulation in these cases could be hard. Even good family lawyers might not be equipped for the tactics used.
And the cost. Financial, emotional.
Devastating. The analysis really highlights that. The constant litigation, the fear, it takes an enormous toll.
Okay, so to really understand what Cassie was dealing with, the analysis provides this detailed timeline of the custody battle.
It does, and it's really eye-opening. The sheer volume of filings, the back and forth, the patterns.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Let's walk through some of the key moments. It kicks off back in 2018.
Yeah, Halloween 2018. Cassie files for a domestic violence injunction against Marcus. The specifics are redacted, but importantly, a temporary order was granted.
And that included Sailor. She was just an infant then.
Yes, Sailor was included, only 3 months old. So the court must have seen enough initial evidence to believe there was an immediate risk. You don't get these easily.
But it was dismissed soon after.
A week later, November 9th, 2018. Dismissed due to insufficient evidence for a continuance. And it's a key point about these orders. You often have to keep proving an ongoing fear, which can be really difficult, legally speaking.
Then things took another turn in March 2019.
Right. Marcus files a domestic violence injunction, but against Cassie's mother.
Against her mother.
Yeah. The analysis doesn't comment on his claim's validity, but notes he mentioned something about her screaming about a gun. What's interesting, though, is he made a point in the filing of saying he had ample access to Sailor.
Even though there was no formal plan yet.
Exactly. The analysis suggests this could be a sign of trying to build that good dad image, regardless of reality. Anyway, that injunction against the mother was denied the same day it was filed.
Okay. What came next seems quite calculated.
Extremely. May 2019, just before Cassie's birthday, Marcus calls DCS, that's Florida's Child Protective Services, alleging child abuse by Cassie.
What kind of allegations?
Things like marijuana use, drinking too much, claiming he saw a bruise on Sailor, using the system as a weapon, basically.
And this DCF report actually ended up being used later against him.
Yes, exactly. It became evidence showing his pattern of false allegations. It's chilling how these systems can be twisted.
And then he filed for full custody.
Just weeks later, May 24th, he filed for full custody, repeating those same DCF allegations. He wanted sole parental responsibility, most of the time with Sailor, and only supervised visits for Cassie.
The analysis calls this a potential smear campaign tactic.
Yeah, trying to basically poison the well, alienate Sailor, make Cassie look bad in court. It's a known, unfortunately common tactic.
Imagine the stress, being served with that, trying to find a lawyer.
While caring for a toddler, it's immense pressure. And almost immediately, Marcus starts pushing hard for her financial documents.
Why the focus on finances?
The analysis suggests it might have been about avoiding child support, framing it as a control issue rather than, providing for his daughter.
Which is a perspective some people take, unfortunately.
Right. It becomes less about the child's needs and more about power over the other parent.
So Cassie got a lawyer in June 2019.
She did, and filed her counterpetition. Importantly, she acknowledged Marcus as the father, but her filing focused more on seeking peace, not detailing all the alleged abuse.
And there might be strategic reasons for that.
Yeah, the analysis points that out. Sometimes leading with abuse allegations early on can unfortunately backfire in court due to biases or fears of being labeled as alienating. Is a very fine line to walk.
That sounds incredibly difficult. What did Cassie ask for?
Shared parental responsibility, but with her having the final say on major decisions and the majority of the time with Sailor, she also filed her own financial details, being transparent.
While Marcus was doing the opposite.
Pretty much. He objected to having a separate hearing just for child support, seemingly trying to keep everything tangled together and delay paying. Then he finally filed his financial affidavit.
And that raised some red flags.
Big time, according to the analysis. His housing costs were listed as unusually low. He claimed high medical expenses for Sailor, but she was actually on Medicaid. And crucially, he didn't disclose his business, 3D Visual Solutions LLC.
So, potential financial dodging or even fraud.
It certainly points towards financial abuse and a lack of honesty with the court, yeah.
But he was ordered to pay child support eventually.
Yes. July 2019. A significant amount. The analysis calls this a huge loss for him, likely in terms of control.
Then there was more legal wrangling.
Oh yeah, lots of back and forths over documents. Cassie's lawyer eventually had to file a motion to force Marcus to hand over financial info he was trying to hide.
Okay, fast forward to September 2019, there's a key hearing.
Right, on Marcus's request for temporary custody arrangements, his evidence. He showed he'd made some child support payments, some nice photos with Sailor again, that good dad image, and the dismissal of Cassie's old injunction, trying to make her look unreliable.
What did Kathy present?
A very different picture. Photos showing her home was set up for Saylor, while his place had basically nothing for a child. Her proposed plan asked for majority time, final decisions, and importantly, communication only through the Talking Parents app.
Why that specific app?
It creates a documented, unalterable record. Crucial in high conflict cases for accountability, to stop it. He said, she said.
Makes sense. Does she also include the DCF stuff?
Yes. The summary showing his false allegations were unfounded. And crucially, she asked again for exchanges only at the Destin Walmart and for his time with Saylor to start only after he had proper housing for her.
Were those requests granted?
Not initially, no.
Yeah.
In October 2019, the court issued a temporary order that actually adopted Marcus's plan. Shared responsibility, communication by regular email text, not the app,
Yeah.
and a specific alternating weekend Wednesday schedule.
So after that, things went quiet legally for a while.
Relatively quiet in terms of court filings, yes. Both their lawyers withdrew at different points in 2020. Marcus started representing himself, pro se.
Which can make things more volatile.
Often does. And the case became inactive, so much so that by July 2021, the court issued a notice of lack of prosecution, basically saying use it or lose it.
But quiet in court didn't mean peace for Cassie.
Absolutely not. The analysis describes this period, mid-2020 to mid-2021, as Marcus engaging in terrorizing behavior, constant harassing, threatening texts.
What triggered them?
Often just Cassie trying to discuss Saylor's safety during COVID, normal co-parenting stuff. He'd threaten bogus contempt motions. It's classic legal abuse, using the threat of court to intimidate and control.
So when the court threatened to close the case...
Marcus exploded legally.
Yeah.
July 12, 2021, he filed 6 motions in one day.
6? What were they?
Dismissed the whole case. Forced Cassie into a psych evil with 0 evidence. Temporary full custody based on more lies about DCF. A cease and desist so she couldn't say his name. Transfer the case, and claimed she was hiding Saylor from daycare to hide bruises. Just wild stuff.
The analysis calls him unhinged at this point.
Yeah, signs of someone losing control and desperate trying to grab it back. Cassie, smartly, rehired her lawyer. Subpoenas went out to DCF.
And Marcus kept going.
Oh, yes.
And
It took Saylor out of state for therapy without telling Cassie. Filed more contempt motions against Cassie, attaching his own aggressive texts, seemingly clueless about how bad they made him look.
Wow. So Cassie's lawyer filed for contempt against him.
Yes. In August 2021, a detailed motion covering him withholding Saylor the unauthorized therapy, blocking communication.
And around this time, Cassie started a GoFundMe.
She did. And she was very open in the description about the abuse, the manipulation from the start, the false reports, the unpaid child support, and how she had known where Saylor was for 2 weeks recently. It all led up to an October hearing.
Before that hearing, Marcus tried some weird moves in the child support case.
Really strange stuff, yeah. September 2021. Motion to get his passport back. He had dual citizenship, claiming he needed an overseas dentist. And another motion to just dismiss all child support, claiming it was unconstitutional, just grasping at straws.
Okay, so October 2021, the big hearing on all these motions.
Finally. And the judge shut most of Marcus's stuff down. The psych evil request for Cassie. Denied. No evidence. Actually, all his motions were denied.
What about Cassie's contempt motion against him?
Partially granted. The judge found him in contempt for some actions, though not for the unauthorized therapy part. But crucially, the judge ordered the Destin Walmart as the official exchange spot from then on.
That seems like a win for safety.
A definite step. And Marcus was ordered to pay a chunk of Cassie's attorney fees, likely because his filings were seen as obstructive or baseless.
So, a partial victory for Cassie, but the fight wasn't over.
Not quite. He still didn't pay those attorney fees by the March 2022 deadline. There was another hearing just on that, and in mid-March, the judge ordered him again. Pay the $5,900 plus within 30 days.
And just days after that order.
March 27th, 2022. Cassie went to that exchange at one of Pagoda's and disappeared.
And then the worst possible news came just over a week later.
Yeah. April 3rd, 2022. As the Florida Protected Parents analysis was being finished, the news broke. Cassie's body was found in a shallow grave in Alabama.
On property linked to Marcus Benevella.
Directly linked, yes. Just horrific.
And this terrible outcome really spurred action, didn't it? Leading to the law named after her.
Absolutely. It became a catalyst. Which brings us to the Cassie Carli law itself, covered by the Pensacola News Journal. Governor DeSantis signed it into law.
What's the main goal of law?
Pretty straightforward. Add safety measures specifically for custody exchanges to try and prevent this kind of tragedy.
And how does it do that? What does it require?
2 key things. First, courts must designate an authorized exchange location, unless the parents both agree, in writing, to use somewhere else.
Okay, so no more unofficial changes like the one to Juana's pagodas unless formally agreed.
Exactly. And second, maybe even more importantly, every single sheriff's office in Florida has to set up at least one neutral, safe exchange parking lot.
What makes these lots safe? What are the requirements?
They have to be accessible 24/7. They need good lighting. And this is crucial continuous video recording running outside.
And I have to keep the recordings.
Yes, for at least 45 days, with accurate date and timestamps. So there's a record if anything happens.
And there's a visual marker.
Yeah, a purple light or sign, which is Cassie's favorite color. A really poignant touch.
That's a significant change. How did the bill get through the legislature? Was it smooth sailing?
Not entirely. Representative Joel Rudman from Cassie's area filed it first in 2023, about a year after her body was found. It passed the House but failed in the Senate that year.
But he tried again.
He did. Reintroduced it in 2024, and this time it passed both chambers with huge support, only one no vote. It went into effect July 1st, 2024.
And Rep. Redmond was clear about his motivation.
Absolutely. He explicitly said the circumstances of Cassie's disappearance during that exchange were the driving force behind the bill.
The news report also recaps the immediate aftermath investigation-wise, right?
It does. Spanavello arrested in Tennessee on April 1st, 2022 for tampering with evidence, obstruction. Cassie's body found April 2nd. Then the FBI got involved by December 2022.
And he was indicted federally.
Yes, January 2023. Federal indictment for kidnapping resulting in death.
Which carries a potential life sentence.
If convicted, yes, life in federal prison. The indictment basically says he kidnapped her, took her across state lines, and that kidnapping resulted in her death.
So bringing this all together, what are the main things you think we should take away from this deep dive?
Well, first, Cassie's story is just a tragic, stark reminder of the dangers that can exist in these high-conflict custody situations. It's not just about arguments, it can be life-threatening.
And it really highlights the need for safer exchange protocols.
Definitely. Which leads to the second point. The Cassie Carli law is a direct, concrete response to that need. Mandating these safe zones is a tangible step.
Yeah, trying to prevent this specific scenario from happening again.
But, and this is maybe the broader takeaway, it forces us to look at the whole system, right? Cassie went through years of this intense legal battle. The analysis shows manipulation, legal abuse.
Right, all happening before the final tragic event.
Exactly. So it raises questions about how well the family court system itself identifies and handles these high-risk situations. Are the dangers faced by protective parents always fully recognized or addressed effectively?
It seems like there might be systemic issues that go beyond just the physical exchange location.
That's the tough part, which leads to, I guess, the final thought for people listening to consider. The Cassie Carli law, providing these safe exchange locations, it's clearly a vital step. But does it solve the whole problem? How well does it address those deeper challenges within the courts regarding the safety of kids and protective parents in these volatile cases?
Yeah, what other changes might be needed? Beyond the parking lots with cameras and people lights, what else needs to happen systemically to really protect people like Cassie Carli in these incredibly dangerous situations?
It's a heavy question, but one worth thinking about.